Now, to fully understand getStaticProps and also see what we can do with it, let's quit the dev server for now and run npm run build. This is the build command which you need to run before you deploy your Next.js site. Now, we are not going to deploy here, but running it is still helpful and interesting. If we run npm run build here to build that production build, to create that production build, we see some output here. And in this output, we see what it did, and that it generated some static pages, for example, 4 pages to be precise, and we see which pages it generated. And what we see here is that it generated the root page for /nothing, the dynamic page for /meetup ID, a 404 page, which it actually generates for us automatically by default in case we enter an invalid URL, and the new meetup page. And then we got these icons here next to the pages, a filled dot and 3 empty dots. If we scroll down, we see a legend here, and we learn that a filled dot is a statically generated site. That's what SSG stands for, static site generation, which was automatically generated as HTML. And JSON, which is then used for prefetching data once the page turned into a single page application. The empty dot stands for static generation. That's almost the same. The only difference is that here we got no initial props, so we have no initial data that was fetched. And indeed, only for the root page we are fetching data, because that is the page where we added getStaticProps, and that's why we have the filled dot here. Now, we will work on some other pages later. To be precise, we will work on the Meetup ID page soon. But for example, the new Meetup page does not need any data fetching. There, we in the end only render our form, and we don't need any data here. We don't fetch any data from a server. And therefore, the new Meetup page will always stay a static page with no content. So that is fine. But we will turn the Meetup ID page into a SSG page later. But for the moment, we see that only the starting page, the root page, is such a statically generated site. Now with that, let's start the development server again. And let's think about potential problems we could be facing when using getStaticProps. And one pretty big problem, which we could face in some websites, depending on what we're doing, is that the data here could be outdated. This page, as I mentioned, is generated during the build process. So thereafter, we deploy it. If we then add more meetups to our database, this pre-generated page would not know about them. And if we don't add any client-side data fetching, we would always just see the outdated meetups here. And this could, of course, be a problem. Now, we can always rebuild our site and redeploy when our data changes. And for some websites, like personal blogs, this is a great alternative, because their data doesn't change too frequently. But if data does change more frequently, there is an extra property which we can add to this returned object. And that's the revalidate property. When we add this property to the object returned by getStaticProps, we unlock a feature called incremental static generation. Revalidate wants a number, let's say 10, and this number is the number of seconds Next.js will wait until it regenerates this page for an incoming request. That means that with revalidate set to some number, this page will not just be generated during the build process. It will be generated there, but not just. But it will also be generated every couple of seconds on the server, at least if there are requests for this page. So that means that this page, with revalidate set to 10, would be regenerated on the server at least every 10 seconds if there are requests coming in for this page. And then these regenerated pages would replace the old pre-generated pages. And with that, you would ensure that your data is never older than 10 seconds. And therefore, the number of seconds you want to use here depends on your data update frequency. If your data changes once every hour, then setting this to 3600 might be great. If it changes all the time, 1 second might be better. But whatever you set this number to, you will ensure that this page will occasionally be pre-generated on the server after deployment, so that you don't have to redeploy and rebuild all the time just because some data changed. It doesn't really matter to us here, especially not as long as we're just using this dummy array, but it is an important feature you should know about, and that is how you can set it.